Hello there everyone and welcome to a new review on the channel. Today we will be looking at Thin Air by Ignacio Lopez and Vanishing Ink. This is a product that does what it's supposed to do but has severe limitations as to where to perform it and its practicality that I think everyone that wants to purchase this should be aware about. There's not going to be a super long video because there's not that much to say about this. So let's roll the intro and get straight into the review. So you decided to stick around to learn more about Thin Air. So as every review, what is Thin Air? Thin Air is essentially a silk that will let you make appear, make disappear, transpose, or kind of switch different things in and out. So that is essentially what it is. I will have a performance up in one of the corners, a quick one of me doing it. But that's essentially what Thin Air is. So where do you buy this and how much does it cost? You can buy Thin Air at Vanishing Ink for $24.95. I do also believe this is available at most magic dealers. I'm not yet sure, but I do think I saw this, for example, at Saturn Magic and at my local magic shop. So if they have it, I do think some of other dealers or magic shops in your area should have this as well. So what do you get when you purchase Thin Air? You get this cardboard box. Inside you get your silk, which is a black silk. It's pretty well made. And then you also get your instructional videos, which are around an hour combined all together. You have one with Ignacio Lopez going over some routines, some ideas, the setup, how this came to be, and some performances. You then have a member from the Vanishing Ink team just refreshing you on the setup of the effect, how to set it up quickly and efficiently. And then you have a bonus section on how to use this beyond the table, which is probably the biggest drawback of this product, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's start with, as we start all our reviews, with the difficulty. What is the difficulty of Thin Air? Thin Air is relatively easy to perform. It is not hard. It is pretty much self-working because all the setup, all the hard work is done beforehand without the spectators ever seeing it. So when you're getting into performance, all you have to do is fold and unfold. So as long as you're able to fold and unfold the silk in half, then you are good to perform. You are ready to go. That is pretty much the entire difficulty of the actual operation of Thin Air. However, I do think that you will need to practice a bit the justification and a bit of patter as to why you're using this and give it kind of a story, because I do think you would downplay the effect if you're just going there and you're like, oh, I forgot to bring my deck of cards. Oh, look, I have a random black silk on the table. Let me fold it, unfold it to get a card. It doesn't play as well. So I do think that a good routining idea is what he does in the trailer, and he explains like nature needs flowers, humans need water. I forgot exactly what he says, but then he said for a magician, his hors d'oeuvre is a deck of cards. So that's essentially a presentation idea. That's not how I'm going to use it. I'll give you kind of my idea. It would just be based on kind of art. So I would say different artists need different things. A painter needs a paintbrush. A sculptor needs a hammer. You would base yourself on that, and then you would essentially go and say that a magician needs two things. He needs a deck of cards and the imagination of the spectator, and the latter is the most important, because if the spectators can all imagine 52 pieces of card materializing themselves, then only then will the magician be able to start his show. The spectators do that, you fold, you unfold, the deck appears, and you go into your show. I think for some that may be corny, but I find it a pretty cute presentation. That's probably how I'm going to use it. If I get the chance to perform it in the specific scenarios it needs to be performed in. So difficulty-wise, that's all I have to say. Now let's talk about practicality. Is this practical? For this review, I'm going to fuse both practicality and where to perform into one because they fit together. So is it practical? Can you perform this anywhere? Not really. So first let's talk about if you don't do parlor, stage, cabaret, or corporate and you have your own table set up with your close-up mat, etc. Let's talk about that. First, if you are a type of performer that does kind of restaurant, weddings, cocktail parties, street, bar magic, you do have some ideas of how to use this in those scenarios, but in my opinion, those don't play as well as if you have a table. It is like an additional idea, and like even it's not even part of the main video. It's a bonus video, like a bonus idea video. So it's clear that it doesn't play as well in those scenarios as it does on the table. And even then, you still have to set your silk up. You do have to present it in a more recluse way, if I may say that. And it's not as open, as clean, in my opinion, of course, as the table version. And it has some drawbacks because if you want to perform table to table, you will have to set it up as you go for each table. So it's not perfect and it's not ideal for those scenarios, I fear. So if you're someone that really wanted it to use it for kind of strolling gigs, it will work, but not incredibly well, in my opinion. Better just continue with your devil's handkerchief in those scenarios. I think that is probably a better choice. However, let's talk about parlor, stage, cabaret. The scenarios where you have a table, you have your close-up mat, people are in front of you. How do you perform it then? First, it is important to precise that in those scenarios, this has to be your opener. You cannot take out thin air in the middle, so you cannot do 3 effects and take out thin air to do an effect. You cannot. You can do one of those standing up versions, but if you want to do the appearances, the transpositions, anything like that, it has to be set up as kind of an opener. Or if you have like a break between your show, so let's say you have a 5-minute break or something, then you can set it up during the break and go again and perform it as like an opener for the second part of your show. But you cannot really use this on the fly in those performance environments as well. It has to be set up, because you do need to set up the silk. You do need to set up what you want to produce or make vanish or change, anything like that. Those have to be set up, and those cannot be set up in front of the spectators. It is not possible to do that. Maybe it is possible if you turn off all the lights for like a minute and you pretend that you're out of power and then you introduce the silk, maybe, but no one is going to do that. So this is not, you're not able to do this on the fly in those scenarios as well. Stick to it as an opener, and most people are probably going to use it as opening a deck, kind of introducing a deck of cards in a magical way. That's probably the main use that people will go for. So I kind of gave you those 2 scenarios, but what if you're someone now that's using Zoom magic, or you want a quick video on your Insta? This will work perfectly, because in those cases, you can set up things off screen, or you can have them already set up if it's for Instagram, and this will work perfectly. So if you're just more looking for something quick and visual for your TikTok, for your Instagram, that will work. If you do Zoom shows, you will be able to set this up kind of on the fly by, using it, by setting it up off camera or anything like that, or introducing it from off camera, placing it on the table, and then panning down your camera again. It will work perfectly. But for the real world, there is some drawbacks if you want to perform it standing up, walk around, and there are some drawbacks if you want to perform it on a table for a parlor environment. There's both positives and drawbacks to both. So do take that in mind, and the setup does take a bit of time. So having said all of that, there's not much more to say, because this is a pretty simple product. It's just a silk that's going to make vanish, appear, transpose certain objects in certain scenarios. So there's not much to say. And the crux of what was to say was in the practicality and where to perform it, and kind of the drawbacks of both scenarios. And I think I kind of covered that pretty well. So let's get into the positives and negatives. First, what are the negatives? The negatives are, no matter where you perform this, it will require a small setup. If you perform it for parlor on stage, you do need a table, you need a mat preferably, you need this to be set up so people cannot watch you set up. You'll have to do this while no one is there or before the show starts. Whatever, it has to be set up beforehand. So leads me to my third point, it has to be used as an opener. You cannot use it in the middle of your set. And that is pretty much all of the negatives that there are. There's not many, but there are pretty important negatives in my opinion. Now, what are the positives? The positives are the silk is well made. The ad copy is pretty transparent. It does do what it says it does. So it's not, you'll be able to do it. Once you learn how to set it up, it's pretty easy to set up. You probably won't forget it. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the positives as well, because it is a pretty simple product at the end of the day. So what is my verdict? Do I recommend thin air And I would say for most people, if you are not going to perform this parlor, if you're not going to have the situation where you can have this set up before people come to watch you and use it as an opener, I would probably not recommend thin air, except maybe also if you want to do something Zoom or TikTok or Instagram. I would not necessarily recommend thin air for you, to be honest. If you do have those scenarios of a parlor, stage, cabaret, or corporate where you have everything set up and you do want an interesting way of having something appear for you to be able to use along in your show, then I do recommend this. It's not expensive, it does what it's supposed to do, and it will work for you. So that's what I have to say. So what is a numerical grade that I will give thin air? I think I will give it a 7 on 10 because I can't give it really much lower because it does what it's supposed to do. It was made clearly for some specific scenarios, and then Vanishing Ink added the bonus video about walk around kind of performances for that. But it was mostly intended for parlor, stage, kind of table magic where you use this as an opener. Mostly it was clearly designed for that, so I can't really give it a less than a 7 because it was designed for that. It's like me taking a stage illusion and giving it a bad mark because you want to perform it in a restaurant. That doesn't work like that. But even though it does what it's supposed to do for those scenarios as well, there are limitations even there that are pretty big. It has to be used as an opener. It has to be pre-set up. You cannot set it up in front of people, so you have to come earlier or have something to protect you while you're setting it up because people will clearly see if they take a glance. So there are some big drawbacks even in those specific scenarios for the product. So I do feel that a 7 on 10 is a fair grade because the negatives are kind of hefty, but it does what it's supposed to do, so I can't notch it much more for that. So that is my review of Thin Air by Ignacio Lopez. I hope that I made you consider the product, whether it's for you, whether it's not, whether to spend your money, whether to not. I hope that you enjoyed. We'll get into another review on Tuesday, and that is going to be the Siri project. That's a really, really good one, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.